It's time for our Friday feature now, Movie Spotlight, reviewing some of the latest cinematic releases at the Korean box office and online. And casting their critical eye over those releases for us are our film critics. This week, we have our principal duo back together again, Jason Bechervaise and Darcy Paquet. Gentlemen, it's great to see you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, great to be back.
Welcome back, Darcy.
Yes, it's good to have you back, Darcy. Well, this week we'll be looking at two local releases on your return, Darcy. The first is a historical drama. It was released last week, but it is sitting atop the box office this week as well, after having generated strong word of mouth. It's called The Night Owl, or Ulbemi in Korean, and it is helmed by the first-time director Ahn Tae-jin. But it stars very experienced actors in Jun-yeol and Hae-jin. So, Darcy, can you give us the introduction?
Sure. The film is set in the mid-1600s, during the Joseon Dynasty. And it's not based on real history, but it is based on some real historical figures. And so it's centered around the Crown Prince Sohyun, who is abducted by the Manchus while he was in his 20s. And then after 8 years, he returns to Korea. But then soon after, he dies a sudden, unexplained death. And this much is in the historical record. And basically, the film imagines a story to go around this. Hae-jin plays the King Injo, who is deeply impacted by his son's death. And Jun-yeol plays an acupuncturist who has day blindness. So he can see very little if there's, daylight or even just some candles around. But in darkness, he can see fairly well, although he finds it convenient to hide this from other characters.
Yeah, they just assume he's blind.
Right, okay.
And then this character witnesses the death of the prince. He sees something that he wasn't supposed to see. And so that sets the story in motion.
I see. Okay, so Jason, there have been many Korean films and TV dramas based on kings of the Joseon Dynasty or earlier eras. Is there anything about this film that makes it distinctive or which makes it stand out from that tradition?
Yes, I mean, some of it we've seen before. It's got a bit of the palace intrigue, of course, which is, synonymous with the period drama. I think what stood out for me was Hae-jin's character, King In-jo, and he comes across as a bit of a tyrant. And, often kings in Korean period films and dramas, you see, I mean, they may have the side to them that's perhaps less good, but on the whole, they're not presented as particularly evil characters. Whereas King In-jo in this film, he completely loses his mind.
Right.
And I don't want to. Yeah, I could give away a spoiler, but I won't. But yeah, he is rather different, and Hae-jin is absolutely fantastic. The acting has attracted a lot of attention. Jun-yeol is clearly one of the big talents of his generation. It's a very nuanced role. I really liked him, and the production values are superb. It's so beautifully shot. The production design is excellent, and the score is fantastic as well. So there's lots to like. When I read the synopsis, I thought it was a kind of murder mystery, and I'm always in the mood for a murder mystery. But it's pretty clear, I wouldn't say early on, but certainly well before the end, who the culprit is.
Right.
So it's not really a murder mystery, but there's a lot in there that I liked.
Right, so it's a bit more of a thriller then, perhaps, Darcy. Jason already mentioned some of the performances. Darcy, what did you make of the film and the performances? Because the two main actors, they're on the film's poster right there in the centre, and it's being marketed partly because of the strength of its cast. Yeah,
I mean, they are two really impressive performances, I think. And it does seem to be a big part of what is driving word of mouth. And, it's great to see Hae-jin playing a king. I believe this is the first time he's ever played a king. And, you have certain actors who maybe are, cast for this role, but he has always been such an interesting actor. And to see kind of what he does with, this kind of performance. I mean, sure. He really has a strong presence that's different from the previous roles that he's done. So that stood out. And
he's played more of like a peasant characters, really, hasn't he?
Yeah, often. I mean,
in
I mean,
sort of
everything
period
from
dramas.
yeah, and
Well, he's traditionally a character actor. You
Right,
know, he
right.
was never a leading actor, but he's proved quite successful, playing quite big roles in films.
Yeah.
Confidential Assignment and so on and so forth.
yeah, and he's so good at comedy too that
Yeah,
I think sometimes people
absolutely. He's great at delivering those lines. His face is remarkable. Watching his face, almost like Song Kang-air. He can do all sorts of things. Taxi Driver. He's in that as well. He plays quite a significant role. He's clearly talented. The acting here is fantastic.
And what about the director, Jason? Ahn Tae-jin, as you said, it's his feature debut. How do you think he did, considering it's his first major film as director?
It's really impressive. This is a feature debut, and it's just really well put together. And I think he was an assistant director on Lee Jin-sook's The King and the Clown, which, of course, is this major hit from 2005, one of the most successful period dramas in Korean film history. And it's taking him, well over a decade, 17 years, well, actually close to 2 decades to get a feature off the ground. And I think at the moment, the films that seem to be working are the films that you have to watch on the big screen. And I'm really glad I watched this in the cinema. It's not a film you can, of course, watch it on a stream platform later on, but certainly I'd recommend watching this on the big screen.
Sure, and you think he's a promising actor then, with a bright future... promising director, with a bright future ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's taken, as Jason said, a really long time for him to make his debut, but I hope that his second and third films come, within a few years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Generally a very positive review from our 2 critics there for The Night Owl. Let's move on to our second film for this week, and it stars the ever-prolific Ma Dong-seok, or Don Lee as he's often called in English. He was the star of the year's biggest film to date, the crime action movie The Roundup. His new film, Men of Plastic, or Apgujeong in Korean, has very little action, but it does play on his rather gruff image. Jason, what can you tell us about it?
The English title refers to this area in Gangnam, south of the river, a very affluent area, which is well known for its hospitals that focus on plastic surgery, and the Apgujeong title, that's where the Korean title comes from, and they play around with the syllables as well. So Ma Dong-seok plays this man. He's somewhat of a opportunist, very much just trying to seek out any opportunities that he can. And so he comes across this old friend of his who happens to be a plastic surgeon, and he's lost his license. And so the two of them kind of come together and try and basically build a hospital that becomes this like mecca for Korean kind of beauty culture.
Right, so a bit of a odd couple story, right?
Yeah.
So Ma Dong-seok has a bit of a thuggish chancer next to the plastic surgeon.
Right, and it's also worth mentioning actually that the film is set in 2007.
Okay.
So I think kind of plastic surgery boom, and so they were trying to take advantage of that.
I see. So, as you said, we get a hint of the movie that it is a bit of a comedy, right, Darcy?
Yeah, but it's not a typical comedy. There's certainly scenes that are comic, and Ma Dong-seok is kind of delivering jokey lines all the time, but at the same time, it's this classic kind of narrative where you have these heroes kind of rise from nothing and experience great success, but then eventually cracks start to form in that success. And so there are parts of the film that I don't know, it feels unusual or distinctive to me, and partly as a film critic, that's what you're looking for in a film, is that it's somewhat different from the typical comedy. On the other hand, the characters, I didn't find them particularly likable.
Right. Yeah.
And then you have this relationship, this Hyung Dong-sang relationship at the center of the film, that it always kind of feels like a relationship of convenience, and then, and it makes you a little bit uncomfortable in some ways. So it's not, I think if you're going just to look for a really entertaining and funny and lighthearted film, that audiences might be a little bit disappointed and they won't quite get what they're looking for. but it is interesting. Like I can't think of other films quite like this.
Yeah, so you've got these two characters, kind of a bromance developing, and that's one of the characteristics of so many Korean films. You know, you've got these, you know, just look at the films dealing with North and South Korea. You have you have these kind of two characters who have conflicts, but at the same time, you know, they have this kind of endearing relationship, and so that's very much plays out in this film. And then you've got this backdrop, Apgujeong, which is this kind of place where you can get rich, and it doesn't portray the place in a particularly positive light, because it essentially corrupts their mind, and they become very focused on basically making some money, but also potentially screwing the other person over. And so that bit I quite liked about it. And certainly, you know, Ma Dong-seok's character is, you know, he brings together that part kind of action hero, but also that kind of more kind of scruffy or edge to him as well, and almost kind of like cute, you know. And I think that works quite well. But yeah, but it's not a film that you can necessarily say, I wouldn't compare it to The Night Owl, for example, and that film I would strongly recommend to watch in the cinema, whereas this one, you know, you can perhaps wait.
Okay, Darcy, were there still parts to enjoy? And actually, what was the film's attitude towards plastic surgery like? I couldn't quite get a sense of it from the trailer either.
Yeah, I mean, it's not particularly judgmental about plastic surgery.
Yeah, it kind of references it rather than kind of a running critique of, you know, plastic surgery.
Yeah, but it is sort of kind of like an origin story for, you know, the neighborhood of Apgujeong and, you know, becoming this center for plastic surgery. And so it imagines an origin story for it. Again, there are parts of the film that I like. I won't say that I didn't like it. We do get to see Ma Dong-seok doing a slightly different kind of character and doing a lot of acting rather than, you know, kind of like physical comedy. And he is a talented actor. It's just, it's kind of an odd story.
Right, a bit of a mixed bag of a film then, okay. So that was Men of Plastic, one of a large number of films actually that are out in theatres this month, which is one last question that I want to squeeze in today. There are Korean independent films, such as Nobody's Lovers, Hey There, Fairy, Through My Midwinter, When Winter Comes, Usu, Trans, and also the more mainstream films, A Birth, Decibel, The Distributors, and Ditto, in addition to international releases, Bones and All, She Said, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Jason, it seems like we're getting an overload of films now. We're coming out the other side of the pandemic.
Yeah, this is kind of, before the pandemic, it was what I call dumping season, right? So you basically, distributors, they decide that they have to release, you know, this film or a certain number of films by the end of the year. And so they just basically throw all these films out there. It makes no sense. But yeah, so this month alone we have 25 releases.
Wow.
Okay. Actually 25 Korean releases. I don't know how many there are in total, but yeah, a lot. And Seiri, I really
Great
like
film.
that. That I think is one of the best K horror debuts in recent memories. So if there's a film that you really want to see and the two films that we talk about today don't interest you, go and see that horror. Seiri.
Okay. Perhaps there's more to come before the end of the year is up as well. Well, we're out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there. Jason, Darcy, thank you for your reviews as ever, and we'll see you again soon.
Yep, thank you.
Take care.